Hey, what's going on, everyone? Mike here, and today this is the third official podcast for Online Sellers Unite. I just want to thank everyone for all the support on the past two podcasts and the channel. It's been amazing, and everything's going very well, so I do appreciate all of the constant positive feedback and comments and interaction that you guys have offered. Now, this podcast will be a little bit all over the place because I have a couple weeks worth of topics to talk about. They don't necessarily coincide together, but I do want to cover them all because I feel like they're all important to us sellers, to selling on Amazon, to the channel, all this stuff. Start out, I do want to say we have a voicemail line set up. So now, if you want to submit questions directly to the podcast and have them played and answered, you can leave a voicemail at 760-678-5856. And no one's going to answer this number. It's a Google voicemail line. So basically, you call, leave a voicemail, and as long as it's appropriate for the show, I'll add it in the next episode each week. And you can feel free to ask about anything you want, really, as long as it's relatively on topic. I'll make sure to include it in the show, and I just appreciate all the interaction. Now, to start out, let's kind of do an update with the channel, the website, Online Sellers Unite, what's going on with me. The last 2 weeks, I've been working like crazy on the website. You guys can check it out now, but it's not finished. It's onlinesellersunite.com. You can give me feedback and all that in the Facebook group if you'd like. I've been, posting, asking for feedback and stuff. It's not finished, but the About Me page is done and the podcast page is done. I'm also working on setting up iTunes today so then I can start uploading the feed to iTunes. I tried to do it the other day and then I had an issue installing iTunes on my computer for whatever reason, so I need to reinstall it. And once that's all set up, everything will be streamlined over there. I'll be posting videos, blog posts. The podcast will go there natively, and it'll also be on YouTube and then iTunes. And the website will be a good place where we can do articles and potentially have different business people doing writing and stuff like that, rather than just myself producing all the content. I think it'll be very helpful because I love the idea of free information for people and a good resource to go there and be able to look at it all. One of the main issues with YouTube is like I'll get people who comment on videos that are 3 years old expecting, that's how things are done today or that's how I do them today. And they're like, this information's out of date. But it's like the video is 3 years old. I don't know what to tell you. On the website, I can highlight stuff that's relevant today, even if there's older blog posts. I can actually bring to the forefront what's important today. I always find it weird because when I check a YouTube channel, even if I found an older video, I click through and look at the newer videos. It seems like a lot of people don't do that. They will like pick a video from 2012 and comment on it, and then they won't even check to see if there's recent content up or whatever. I mean, the landscape of the internet and business and all that stuff changes at such a rapid pace. I would always check if there's more up to date content, no matter where I'm at usually. All that being said, we hit 11,000 subscribers, so that's awesome. We're actually already at almost 11,200. It's going absolutely insane. And I've been full-time reselling officially as of last week for an entire year. So in 1 year, I went from being a chef to selling online full-time on eBay and Amazon, mostly Amazon. And we've grown the channel from 3,000 subscribers to 11,200, and it's just unbelievable. Like this year's been really awesome to me, and I just cannot thank you guys enough. And the community is just continuing to grow. The Facebook group's at over 1,000. I think it's at 1,200 members. My Facebook page is at 500 followers. I could only hope that all of this stuff coincides and we end up with a really successful website and a really successful very good community here in the future. And I shouldn't say that because it's already very successful, but I only want bigger and better things. So I think we're headed in a great direction. That growth in 1 year is phenomenal, and it's so awesome. And doing this full time for a year, I've learned quite a few things, but I will say that a lot of people make it look easy, right? It's really not. It's a lot of work. There's so much that goes into selling online, and it's incredible the amount of hours and time you put in, especially when you're starting out, to make that switch. There's a comfort in having a day job because you know what? If you're having a bad day or you're sick and you still make it to work and you're slacking off or whatever, not that I had that opportunity as a chef, but you still get paid, right? If you're in this business, just a few bad days in a row can put you way, way behind, especially when you're making content and Facebook posts and all this other stuff. So the amount of work is incredible, but it's very fulfilling, very rewarding, and I think I would have it no other way. And I'm very happy that I made it 1 year so far. So here's to another year and another year on the channel. Let's see if we can get it uh, double the subscribers in a year. That'd be awesome, or maybe even better than that. Who knows? Also, for myself, I was getting way behind in FBA shipments. So last week I sent out 250 units, and this week I'm working on a shipment. I'm looking to have it set up by Friday so it can get picked up by Monday. And I think I'll be around 300 units for this one. I have a lot of different stuff in this one. I have a lot of new products, which I don't typically have. I have some kind of collectibles, and then I have some vintage cassette tapes, which is a little weird, but I actually got these from Chad, and there's some really cool ones in there. I found there's a couple cassettes in there worth between $25 and $70 actually. I got some pretty rare Nirvana cassettes, which actually I don't know why I never realized that Nirvana had cassette tapes. I guess because I've never seen them, but a lot of them are pretty hard to find and they're in phenomenal condition. So overall, I wouldn't typically send in a bunch of cassettes to Amazon because a lot of the price points are not very good. But I sorted through them, and any of them that sell for like $10 to $20 are going in, and then quite a few of them are selling for above the $20 mark just because they're rare and there's not a lot of competing sellers. I did have to spend a lot of time checking rank and stuff because there's a lot of them that don't have any proven sales. But it's something a little different. I think the cool part about FBA is you could really send in a lot of different things. Amazon was really, and still is, the main seller for media and books and, these types of things. And a lot of people overlook that. I mean, back, when, not necessarily when cassettes were big, but back when Amazon first became big, they were selling stuff like cassettes and CDs and books, and they were the number one seller of these. So they have established listings for this stuff, and people still go there to purchase these items, and a lot of people overlook the vintage media aspect. That being said, I don't know if the market's huge there or not. It's hard to tell because, there's not a ton of sales information for these old listings on Amazon. Any of the listings that were created when Amazon was first around don't have very good statistics when you try to look them up. So I guess we'll consider an experiment. I can't really lose money on the deal no matter what just because of the couple rare cassettes. I'm not too concerned. I just want to see how it actually does, and I guess I'll report back in a couple of weeks and let you guys know if I sold any, if it seemed like it was worth it. If not, the good news is they're really easy to package, and I've been using list label ship. I kind of redid my setup. For the longest time, I wasn't using list label ship. I was just using label sheets for my HP printer, and then I would have to organize everything and label it one by one later on, which was a big pain in the ass because I didn't necessarily put everything in the correct order, so then I'm digging through piles of merchandise. Now when I list, I print up the label right away and put it on for most items, and then I just kind of put them in a pile. And I've actually made this setup even more efficient by creating boxes that are in alphabetical order, so basically A through Z. And granted, like X, Y, Z, they're one box. But now when items are labeled, they get thrown in those boxes that coordinate with their title that's on the sticker. And then when I create my shipment, I just go pull quickly because before when you do a shipment of 250 items, say they're all laid out on tables. You have to go and find the individual items in order. There's really no way to tell what order each shipment's going to be in since Amazon creates the shipments after you submit the items. Now I'm putting everything in alphabetical order, so when I am doing my shipments, I print out my packing list, and I just go down the line, and then I can grab from the alphabetized boxes, which seems to have streamlined the whole thing a lot more. Now, here's a question for you, because I've been trying to find this, and I don't know if it exists. Is there any software out there for Amazon FBA that will allow you to know what warehouse your items are potentially going to go to ahead of time? The reason I ask is because it would be awesome if, as I am listing items, my shipments are being made to certain warehouses, right? And then I can just throw them in the bins for each warehouse. Then when I'm done, everything's labeled. I just have to package for each warehouse. Instead, right now, you have to list everything. Then when you hit submit, it creates shipments at that point. But I was wondering if there's something that can actually look into the future in the sense that it knows what Amazon is thinking and it can give you the shipments ahead of time. I'm assuming it's probably not available. It would be a fantastic software. The other way around that would be to do inventory placement, but then you have extra fees. So I'm trying to figure out a way to streamline that a little more, especially when you're sending in hundreds of units each time. It becomes a lot more difficult to organize than when you're sending in 60 of them. And like my last shipment was 5 warehouses, I think. So then I had to take 5. I print out packing lists to organize my thoughts, but I had 5 of those, and I had to sit there and pick through stuff. It took quite a long time. So I'm just trying to make this operation more efficient if I can. While we're on the topic of Amazon, this is very, very important. I'm sure a lot of you've got bad news in your email this past week. Thank you to the viewer who sent this to me. They are going to be restricting the selling of toners and ink on Amazon, which means third parties are no longer going to be able to just resell ink from the thrift stores or whatever, which basically means most people will shift over to eBay. But that's not good news because the prices will plummet over there. One good aspect about Amazon is it's a little better at maintaining pricing. Starting November 12th, there are tons of listings that you'll no longer be eligible to sell ink on. You won't be able to do it no matter what. The only exception to this is if you get permission from the manufacturers and you provide them with proper invoices that you can get approved. So basically they're making it a restricted category, one that you can only get in with approval. Now, it should be noted that if you have ink at Amazon already, you have up until 30 days after the email date when you get it to sell those items off. After that, you either have to have them returned or disposed of. You cannot send in any more ASNs that are in the restricted list, which I would assume is most of the ink. And they're saying they would like you to make a removal order between October 13th and November 12th. So not good news at all. And that's the type of thing that will continue on in the future. There will be companies that complain, or Amazon won't like the way people are undercutting prices. They'll make more and more things restricted. That being said, I wouldn't be so worried about it. You have to move forward and worry about what you can make money on. And this was something I've really been thinking about the last couple weeks. It's really been lingering on my brain with a lot of topics. And business isn't about what opportunity isn't around. It's about what opportunity is around. And I'll tell you the story of why this even came up. So basically, I got a message, which I get tons and tons of messages, and I try to respond to them all. So if you send me a message and I miss it, I do apologize. I mean, I get a lot of messages. But the message was basically, hey, Mike, you say you snipe online in your videos. That's how you source mostly, and it just doesn't seem viable. There's no way that you're able to source online like. Basically, the person's telling me, I looked online, I couldn't find this, I couldn't find this, I couldn't find this, and I don't see how you do it. It doesn't make any sense. It has to be something special you're doing. And the short answer is there isn't. My system for sniping is so simple and it's almost hard to convey, but the more and more I look at it, I realize I must, and I don't mean this in an egotistical way, but I must be decent at it, because when I try to explain it to other people, they just like, nah, it doesn't, I can't do it. It doesn't seem to work. And I don't have special keywords I search. There isn't some secret place I look. It's just I go on eBay and I find the stuff that I want. But what struck me about this message is it was a message of everything that they couldn't do. There was no positive light in this. Just I couldn't do this. I couldn't find this. This doesn't make sense. I can't. And I don't look at things like that. I don't go on eBay and go, I can't find this, this, or this. I go on eBay and I find things, and I say to myself, I can find this, this, and this, so keep looking for this, this, and this. And then I move forward, and if I find something else different, I go, oh, I did find this, so let's keep looking for this. I never look and dwell on the things that I can't find. For me, business is never about what isn't around, what opportunity isn't around, what money can't be made. Who cares about what can't be done? What matters to you is what can be done. That's all that ever matters to me. That's great that you can't sell this on eBay anymore. Okay, so let's move forward, and what can we sell on eBay now? There's too much lingering on the things that cannot be done. and blaming other issues for not succeeding. And this has really been like an ongoing topic lately. And I just don't get the negative light of things. You're in business. There's no excuses in business whatsoever. If you fail, it's your fault because you didn't change what you were doing and you just try to continue to make what wasn't working work. And I want to talk a little more about this entire topic in a second. But with this being said, just look at things in a more positive light and more importantly, make an opportunity out of what you can do. And the only time that this quote about business not being about what opportunity isn't around is not relevant is if you see an opportunity not around and you capitalize on it. And that's what's even more important here is if you see there's no opportunity to do something or there's no particular item available in your area, then you can create an opportunity out of it. And a perfect example is my story from the last podcast when I started selling snacks and candy at school because we didn't have a snack bar. See, I noticed there was no opportunity for kids to buy snacks, but kids love snacks. So then I said, well, how can I make an opportunity out of basically this opportunity not being available to them? That's the only reason you should ever look at an opportunity not available is in an open-minded sense to make it an opportunity for someone else. So if you go on eBay and you say, I can't find this, this, and this, well, maybe then you can go to yourself and go, well, how can I source this locally and then sell it on eBay where I'm not able to find it? Or, something along those lines. Now, there was this big debate last week or 2 weeks ago or whatever about free information. I made a video about it. It spurred all kinds of nonsense. But more importantly, it spurred a lot of discussion about is free information killing reselling and is it a big deal? And my honest belief on it is it isn't a big deal. And it's never going to be a big deal. Here's why. I've discussed in detail, but this is not going to be about drama or nothing today. I want to actually give you some examples of why I think it's not a big deal, and this also goes hand in hand with the opportunity thing. The main issue here is the fact that, say I didn't put out free information, okay? I don't put it out at all. Someone else will put it out and capitalize on it in some way. Now, for me, I put it out because I actually enjoy sharing it. I enjoy the community. I really enjoy doing stuff like this podcast, for instance. It's just allowed me to expand my whole reselling, my niche, my business experience, everything. It's made it so I can live a life where this surrounds my life and I actually enjoy this. And now there's tons of like-minded people I can talk to on a constant basis. And that's why I really enjoy this. But say I wasn't doing it, someone else would be doing it, right? So whether or not I put out free information really doesn't affect the whole picture at all unless everyone stopped doing it at once, which would never happen because the reselling community can't coordinate to save their life, right? So that isn't really a concern for me. But what I thought was interesting is a lot of people were blaming free information for more competition. And in no way was I saying that it doesn't spur more competition. Of course, it does spur competition to an extent. But the thing is, for me, most of the competition is negligible. The reason is reselling is not as easy as everyone makes it look, which is something I talked about at the beginning of the podcast. It's really not simple. It's not as simple as you go to the thrift store, buy stuff, and sell it online. The reason is you have to know what to buy. You have to know what to price it for. You have to put in the effort. It takes a lot of work. You got to know how to take photos. You need to have the equipment to do it. And there's a lot more that goes into it than people try to make it. A lot of people try to make it seem like you're just selling online. It's that simple. It's really not that simple if you're going to try and do this full time. There's a lot that goes into scaling things up. There's a lot that goes into finding the right items. It's a lot of work. And yeah, you might enjoy one aspect of selling, which the usual aspect people enjoy is sourcing. And then they have to start listing and they get behind real fast because they realize it's not nearly as fun. And reselling isn't all fun and games. And because of that, most people that try to do reselling fail. A lot of people fail. And this is why I was saying to go watch Pete's, the Craigslist Hunter's video on it. He explains that, it's comparable to the restaurant business in real life. And it really is comparable because I've been in the restaurant business. And like 90-something% of restaurants fail within the first 5 years. Seriously, it's ridiculous. And a huge percentage in the first couple years even. And the reason being is people go into it thinking they can make an easy buck. Oh, everyone wants to eat food. Oh, everyone wants to buy online. But there's a lot more logistics that go into those things. And for me, that's the main reason that free information is irrelevant. But more importantly, even if it spurs competition, it makes your business harder, it's not to blame for you failing, ever. And the reason being is because you chose not to change. Whether or not your niche gets flooded because of some person making videos or some book that came out or whatever, you have to adapt. Whether or not you like it, that's the way it is. That's the business you got into when you started reselling on someone else's platform that can easily be flooded. Your other option is create your own website, create your own brand, push your own products, create your own following, and do something with that. If you don't, and you decide you're going to resell on eBay and Amazon, then you're playing by their rules, and if their market gets flooded, then you need to adapt. But what I found really interesting about this is the fact that people were still blaming free information for them failing or losing a niche or whatever, and I found it kind of interesting because I was thinking to myself, when we look at, for instance, this is going on right now, very popular. The taxi business is starting to fail, right? And the reason they're failing is because they chose not to innovate. Uber came along and offered a service to any person who wants to shuttle people around for some extra cash. So basically, it introduced some kind of, in a way, not professional, couriers. More of the it's a hobby courier. And they introduced these hobby couriers. Basically, they drive people around on when they have free time, randomly in the weekend. They want to make some extra cash. They know people are out drinking tonight. Or some of them do it seriously. And I mean, they're really pushing hard and making good money. Anyways, the taxi business has started failing. And taxi drivers are irate at the Uber drivers, which I find hilarious. So here we are. The taxi driver themselves are blaming the Uber drivers. But do we, when we look from an outside view, do we blame the Uber driver? Absolutely not, right? We look at the Uber driver and go, you're doing the right thing. We never blame Uber for taxis failing. Yet the driver of the taxi does blame Uber for the taxi failing. And I realize this fits with our situation very, very well. And the fact is, we don't have the right to blame the free information for us failing. We don't. But we're the taxi driver looking at other people innovating and changing, and we get angry. The fact is, you need to innovate if you want to succeed. So really, it's the taxi company's fault for not innovating, for not realizing that mobile was what they should have been targeting to begin with, for not changing their fee structure, to not, offering better services. And because of this, taxis are now failing. And guess what? It's 100% the taxi's fault. And this is the same situation when we look at Netflix and Blockbuster. Never once could we possibly blame Netflix for Blockbuster failing. Yet Blockbuster did fail. And to make it even worse, Blockbuster had the opportunity to buy Netflix for a very low amount of money, and they passed up on it. So they're a bunch of idiots for passing that up to begin with. But it's not Netflix's fault that Blockbuster failed. It's Blockbuster's fault for not realizing what the future is, how things change, how trends are going. And it's the same situation with any business, but especially reselling, where things can be flooded in a moment's notice for any reason. And, if you want to look further into this subject and you want to blame something, I always find it interesting that people are blaming YouTubers when there was and it's nothing against Jason and Thrift Hunters at all. I like the show a lot. But there was a national TV show about thrifting, guys. That gets a lot more flooded views than anything. If you want to look at a market that got destroyed for many years because of a TV show, Storage Wars, which was, and I'll give it to Thrift Hunters, they gave a more realistic view of items. The prices weren't way far off or anything. That was a lot more realistic than some shows I've seen. But let's go on the extreme here. Storage Wars was doing stuff that completely flooded the storage market and ruined it for so many people. But you can't sit around blaming those things. If you're in the storage auction business and you realize it's getting flooded, you better move on. You can't just sit there and fight against the TV show's popularity. So thing is, there's always bigger things in play here, and there's no sense in standing around pointing fingers. It doesn't accomplish anything at all. Zero things. It doesn't. You need to stop pointing fingers, start looking at where your business is going, where you want it to go, and what changes are happening in the market landscape at any given moment. If you don't make those changes, it's on you because you kept doing the same repetitive routine that caught up with you. All right, to finish the show, I'm going to tell a story here. I want to go over a specific situation and why I think business is about how you start and not how you finish. Give some examples and kind of open this up for discussion. I would love to hear your thoughts on this situation. And mind you, I'm not pointing fingers here at all. Listen to the story. It's not. I don't care if someone's a felon or whatever. You got to hear the entire story to understand what I'm getting at. I have nothing against felons or any situation, but I do have issues with people using their beginning to justify a bad situation there. And the story is, it actually happened to my cousin Chris. He's a manager at a store, and basically someone came in and they dropped off an application. And in the application it said that they were a felon, and my cousin, nicely and not in a rude way, was like, "Hey man, I appreciate the application. However, you're a felon. We have a rule here that we don't hire felons. That's their call." And the guy got really defensive and started going on and on to my cousin Chris. And I thought it was interesting because my cousin Chris called to talk to me about this, and I knew why, and I'll explain that more in a minute. But basically, the guy was going on and on about how he had a terrible childhood. When he was 17, he had to sell crack to make money to live, and he ended up getting caught. He continued doing it until he was an adult. He ended up getting caught, going to prison, and became a felon. And what really drove my cousin Chris off from this situation was the fact, he's making a lot of excuses for being a felon. Everyone's situation is different. Yes, things suck, and yeah, you could easily get drug into a situation where you're selling drugs and stuff like that in ghetto neighborhoods. Totally. But the guy mentioned that he had the opportunity to get all of this expunged, and he didn't go and get it done. And so that's what actually made my cousin Chris really upset. He was like, "Dude, you're telling me all this excuses why you're a felon, and then you even told me you could have got this removed before you came here, and you didn't show up to get it expunged." He's like, I don't feel bad for you. I'm sorry. I don't. I get that you had a rough childhood, but we all have a rough childhood, man. Lots of things have happened to lots of people. Why is it that I'm supposed to make an exception because your situation was worse when you were a kid? And the guy got really defensive, and he just kind of ended up rubbing my cousin the wrong way, even though he was trying to be understanding of the situation. Needless to say, Chris called me. We talked for a long time about this, and it kind of came down to the whole theme that it's not how you start, it's how you finish. This is relevant to business, your life, anything like that. And for those of you that don't know, I had a really rough childhood. Seriously, very rough. And Chris didn't grow up in the best childhood either. I don't know if it's necessarily comparable to mine, but I grew up in the ghetto, around a lot of drugs in really bad neighborhoods, just not a good situation. But hardly ever do I flash back to that and talk about it or make an excuse for anything. I only use it to let people know because I'm just an honest guy. It doesn't bother me to talk about it. Cool, things happen. My life wasn't great then. It doesn't bother me now. Never once will you see me like doing something and going, "Well, I can't do it, man. I grew up around this." Like, it's not the way I am. I have serious social anxiety because of the way I grew up, but never do I blame the way I grew up for it because it's my job now to make that better. And doing this podcast and YouTube, and that's all part of making it better. And I feel so much better now than I did a couple of years. Needless to say, we had a pretty long phone conversation, and I was surprised because Chris, not necessarily the most business-minded person. He's a big-time gamer like I am, so him and I get along very well. But he came up with some really, really good examples of it's not how you start, it's how you finish in business. And I was like, wow, those are really good. I want to talk about those on the podcast. So I guess what I'm getting at here is, as rough as your situation is now, or it may have been, you can always make your situation better. And I've been in some really dark situations in my life, but you have to work towards something better. As bad as things get, once you're at the bottom, you really don't, there's nowhere else, downward you can go. You only have upward to go. And I know I've heard that a million times, and when I was depressed and in a bad situation, I heard that, and I'm like, you're full of shit. But it's very, very true. It is. And for years and years, I thought my life would never get better, and now it's so much better. So I'm just super thankful. But the 3 examples he came up with, and don't laugh here because we're going to talk about Donald Trump for a minute. I know he's in a political campaign and all that shit, and I don't even care anything about that. But Donald Trump's one of them, McMahon from wrestling, and then Gary Vaynerchuk. And these are all good examples. And he actually brought up Donald Trump first, I believe, because I had him written down in that order. And it was really surprising to me because I don't know if my cousin knew anything about Donald Trump. And anyways, Donald Trump, if you don't know, I've actually read his first book, which was actually a fantastic book. I think it's called The Art of the Deal. And it kind of gives an insight into how his life was when he was younger, what he was doing business-wise. And a lot of people hate on Donald Trump and go, he inherited his riches, right? Which isn't true at all. Donald Trump did inherit a pretty decent business from his father. It was a business that was owning property, and the real estate business. Basically, they owned some apartment complexes, and yeah, they weren't broke by any means whatsoever. But they sure the hell weren't the Trump brand that's around today. I can tell you that. And in the book, the reason I really love this book is because it reminds me of when I was a kid. His dad taught him in the apartment complex how to save money in every way. For instance, at nighttime, they would unscrew certain light bulbs in the hallway so they wouldn't come on, or I'm sorry, during the daytime they would unscrew certain light bulbs in the hallway so they wouldn't come on, and then at night they would light the hallway back up so people can see. Or they would do little things to save money, and they were very, very frugal no matter how much money they had. And this really struck me because this kind of behavior is very, very important as a business person. Saving every dime counts, and a good example of this is I was watching Pete, the Craigslist Hunter's video a while ago, and he talked the lady down from $3 to $2, and there's all this hate in the comments going on and on and on about how he talked the lady down for $1. What the hell is he thinking? And all I could think to myself from an entrepreneurial standpoint was, that's 33%, dude. He saved 33%. That's huge. If I can save 33% on $100, that's 33 fucking dollars. Like, that's a lot of money. And those dollars add up, and that's how I've always thought about things. But the fact is, Donald Trump, while he started in a decent situation, it definitely wasn't where he is now, and he turned what he started into something much, much, much bigger. Had he started out broke and just became a millionaire today, it's a similar situation. No matter if he had opportunity or not, he took what he had and turned it into something so much more. I mean, the Trump brand owns so many things now. They own so much money. And while I don't agree with most of his big business practices or some of the shit he says, the fact is he did grow a business to something really spectacular. And then we get over to McMahon and, over at WWF and now WWE, I believe. Wrestling was never what it is today until he really stepped it up to become a huge entertainment industry. I mean, wrestling, I don't know that wrestling's at its peak anymore. It probably isn't. But when it was at its peak, and when they had people like The Rock and Stone Cold, and that's the peak from the income standpoint, from my standpoint. I'm not saying that's the peak of wrestling. I'm sure there's wrestling fans that be like, dude, what the fuck are you talking about right now? I get what you're saying. I'm talking about from a business standpoint. Wrestling was huge when I was a kid. I mean, we had every toy. We watched Stone Cold and The Rock every single time they came on. We had so much stuff in our house from them. And everyone I knew owned Stone Cold shirts and Rock shirts and the Rock and Sock Connection. And the business standpoint from that, it just exploded. It was massive. I mean, people were paying $60, $70 just to watch an hour-long pay-per-view special. And it was never like that. Wrestling was never that kind of income. Wrestling was never that huge, and maybe there were times when it was bigger than that before I was born. I'm a young guy. I was born in the '90s, so I mean I could have missed a huge era of wrestling. I'm sure I did, so I don't want to offend anyone here. But from my standpoint, that seems like when they were bringing in the biggest amount of money. And I don't know if it's comparable with inflation if they were doing bigger amounts before that, but it was insane, right? The amount of people and fans, and the weird part was, at that time, I know back in the day, there's lots of hardcore wrestling fans. But at that time in the 90s or whatever, I guess early 2000s even, it was so weird because a lot of people that weren't wrestling fans became wrestling fans. I never liked wrestling in my entire life. My mom, she could care less about wrestling, right? At all. She loved The Rock and Stone Cold and all those guys. Like, for whatever reason, they had the right mix of guys at the time, and it really just exploded. But that being said, the wrestling, I don't even know what it was called before that. Probably the World Wrestling Federation back in the day before he inherited it. It wasn't anything comparable to what it is today. Even now, even with wrestling being not as big as it was, it has the most hardcore fans, the most brand loyalty. It makes so much money. They make and sell all of their own merchandise. They don't third party any of that stuff, And the fact that he's willing to get in the ring with his kids and they're part of it and they've wrestled and got beat up and hit, like, the passion there and the loyalty to that brand is phenomenal. What they've done is phenomenal. I don't know exactly how they started or what their childhood was like, but it's a great example of it's not about how you start, it's definitely how you finish. And the last example was Gary Vaynerchuk, and he's probably the closest example to my life, although his situation is a little more different. You know, he was they came in as immigrants. He was in a tough situation. He grew up in a tough situation. Granted, his situation is tough for a lot of different reasons than mine, but you know, a lot of people, I've heard a lot of people say that he inherited what he has. And the fact is, yes, his father owned a liquor store. And yes, he flat out says his father's liquor store was making about $2 million a year. Now I don't know if that's gross or profit, or that's gross actually. Now that I think about it, because he was saying that Wine Library was bringing in upwards of 70 million a year, and I would assume that's total sales. Anyways, his father owned a liquor store, which he got from his uncle or he bought from his uncle. And then Gary Vaynerchuk later came on board, and as he grew older, he tried to grow the business. Then they got into the internet business, and he pushed something that was a couple $1 million into $70 million or whatever it is now. And that's phenomenal. But it's important to note that while Gary Vaynerchuk shares his childhood and the rough times they've been through and some of the stuff they've been through, being immigrants and coming to the U.S., and I can't even imagine what that's like. I mean, that's got to be so scary as a family, especially if you're the adults in the family. As a kid, it's scary, but you're a little more adaptable to those situations. If you grew up in a foreign country and you have to move to America just like that, and you have to start from nothing, imagine how terrifying that situation is. And yes, he inherited a business, but he made it something so much bigger. And when he talks about his childhood, it's never an excuse for where he's at or the things he's been through. It's always just, this is how I grew up, but this is where I'm at now. And that's what matters, where you're at now. And I thought those were three great examples of, from the business aspect of where people started versus where they are now. And there's tons more examples. Oprah would be a great example. She didn't grow up in a great area. People like Tyra Banks, I'm sure she had a terrible life. And there's a lot of people that this has happened, but most importantly, you never hear any of them pondering about their terrible childhood unless they're asked about it. They just kind of bring it up because it doesn't matter. And I noticed there's actually a trend there. People that grow up in really tough situations, they tend to really push harder and go for things because they appreciate it that much more. And that's why I thank everyone so much, and I'm so appreciative of the support and the opportunity to even do this and have people listen. I mean, it's amazing. It's so amazing to me even. All right, but I think it's time to wrap up the podcast. I'm not sure exactly how long this episode will be. I kind of just talk till I'm out of topics, and I don't like to ramble too much. Pretty soon we're going to have guests on here. I just have been trying to make sure I can get this more consistent, and I want to get the website up first so everything is streamlined and uploads to iTunes automatically. Once that's all set up, we'll start doing guests. And like I said, if you guys want to leave a voicemail question, if you have suggestions for the show, you can always email me at gameweaver@gmail.com. But if you want to leave a voicemail, the number is 760-678-5856. And it's a voicemail number. You can leave questions, comments, all that stuff about the show. I'd love to hear feedback and any of that. I do appreciate everyone listening. Thank you so much. If you have any suggestions, all that, make sure to email me. And if you want to join the conversation and the community and all that, we have a Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/onlinesellersunite. My page is facebook.com/onlinesellersunite. And subscribe to the channel. I put out tons of extra help videos and tips and stuff like that. And if you want to support the channel directly, you can use our Amazon affiliate link. It'll be down in the description. That supports us directly. We get I think it's 4 to 6% of whatever you purchase, no extra cost to you whatsoever. And like I said, I appreciate the support so much. I can't believe it's been 1 year full time. I can't believe we're over 11,000 subscribers. And I can't get over it. I can't thank you guys enough. I'll talk to you very soon. Have an awesome day. Keep on selling. Keep on pushing. We'll see you very, very soon.